And we're back.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lore Lodge. I don't know which camera. It's that one. Hi, welcome back to the Lore Lodge. Archie is here. He's in studio. He's not facing the camera, but are we really surprised?
No.
He had a great time in the snow today. Dude was having a vibe and a half in the snow today. So just thought you should see this, because what we're about to talk about is not happy. So here's some Archie for you.
This is the happiness to
This
start.
is the happiness that we're starting the day with. And then it's about to get sad. Would you like down or up? Okay. All right, here we go.
Once again, he is baby.
He is baby. So he'll get a few scratches. Anyway, I have just started working on the next JonBenet video, part 4. I thought this was going to be a particularly long one-part video, and I was wrong. But I started working on part 4 today. And that was a little bit of reacquainting myself with what we'd already done, because it's been a few weeks. But then also sort of jumping through. And we're finally getting to the part that I feel like I am best at when it comes to this, which is the interview analysis.
Yeah, I know you've been looking forward to this for several weeks.
For those of you who have seen the Sebastian Rogers series, and now the just full documentary that went up on Friday, you'll know most of what I did with that case was comparing interviews, looking for inconsistencies in the story. Because when you have no physical evidence, which is basically the case with JonBenet, I mean, the intruder did it side will argue till the cows come home that the unknown DNA proves that the Ramseys had nothing to do with this. And in my opinion, first of all, I keep seeing more and more coverage that says the intruder, the DNA is not as strong of a profile as they keep insisting it is. So we have somebody who's supposed to be taking a look at that. I haven't checked in on that in a little bit. So I got to go through and see where we're at with
You have been ill.
I am sick also. I have not been well. This is like a few weeks that I should have had this like handled, but I also didn't know what questions to ask necessarily. I just got to get it done.
Plus, they did, when we first messaged them about this, they did say it was going to take some time. So.
Yeah. So I'm also not there yet. You know, I'm not at that part. Would I love to have an answer? Yes. But am I there yet? No. But for those who watch the Sebastian Rogers stuff, this is a similar situation where there's really no physical evidence because the police did not handle it the way they should have. In the Sebastian Rogers case, it's much worse. Because if I am the police and I get that phone call, that 911 call at like 6 a.m. from the Proudfoots, I didn't think this at the time because I hadn't studied the JonBenet case. But if I'm a police officer, I assume that I've at least read about the JonBenet case and what went wrong. Perhaps not. If that is not the case, then have we learned nothing, guys?
Based on everything you've covered about
we've learned nothing.
Well, not just that, but this seems to very much not be an instance of like the Miami-Dade shooting for the FBI. It seems like this happened and nobody learned anything. Nobody even tried to learn anything.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there were protocols put in place because of the JonBenet Ramsey case that should have been followed with Sebastian Rogers. And I mean, I don't know how as an officer you're sitting there, you get the 911 call at 6:30 in the morning, and it's, oh, our child is missing. How do you not, at least in the back of your mind, go, all right, this seems familiar. I mean, there's differences. Don't get me wrong. Like, in the JonBenet Ramsey case, if we look at it, there is the alarm system in the home that wasn't on, right? And in the Sebastian Rogers case, we have an alarm system in the home that everyone has alluded to that apparently has no bearing on this case. Because, multiple people have mentioned there being cameras in the home. The Proudfoots were really cagey about where the cameras are in the home and said there weren't any outside, but that would imply there are some inside. And you would think that one of those cameras would have caught Sebastian at least walking through the house, if not leaving it.
You would think. Also, do want to point out that it's a little weird to have security cameras inside your house, but not also outside.
Little strange. Yeah, I know. I agree. I'm not sure I believe that there weren't any outside either. But so that's just that. Those aren't similar. There's nothing there. I just I don't know. I know that I make this big thing about it and then I don't say much just because I'm sick and I don't have time to go through the bullet point list of every single thing. I have videos on both. But my point is to say that when I look at the Sebastian Rogers and the JonBenet cases, I see a lot of similarities. And we went over that last week. A lot of the same mistakes were made. A lot of the police issues were the same. But as I'm going through the part 4 stuff for JonBenet, I came across I was looking for something else entirely. I came across a comment from a user called Jameson. And I had read the name Jameson before in Kohler and Thomas's books. I'd read the name Jameson in a number of articles. The name Jameson came up, I think, in one of the documentaries we watched. And the weird part was, I'm reading through this transcript of an interview that happened with Burke Ramsey on the 26th of December, 1996, which I actually was not aware it happened because it hadn't come up anywhere yet. It was in Kohler's book, and I just hadn't seen it yet. Turns out they did interview Burke on that day. Went about 40 minutes. Most of the transcript has never been released to the public. For some reason, A&E got their hands on it and did not release it to the public and did not include the entire thing in their documentary, which is just, again, to say, guys, if you're not going to actually try and solve the case, just don't talk about it. Like, and, that's kind of where I was coming from with the title for this one. When true crime becomes crime drama, so much of it becomes that. It's all Law and Order. It's all, it's all CSI. And with Jameson, I was frustrated enough about A&E, right? But then again, it's A&E. They're an entertainment company. That's what they do. Their job is to present an interesting, compelling story that will get you to watch their channels so they can sell advertising revenue, right? There's all the people in the comments. Some people are talking about how they've seen the actual transcript. They have access to the actual transcript, something like that. There's Jameson saying, who I now know to be she, saying she has all 30 pages. And she'll go through and see what she thinks. Well, Jameson's not law enforcement, never was. Jameson was a Web Sleuths user who had an email exchange with Don Foster. Jameson is the one who literally, as it turns out, she's bragging about it. She's like, well, I got Don Foster to say that I was the killer and that, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, you were deliberately misleading him to make him believe that you were. So, yeah, I can see how that might have happened over the course of these internet exchanges you had, because you were trying to convince him you were somebody you were not in order to discredit him, which completely discredits you, not him. So,
also sounds like a clear case of obstruction of justice in and of itself.
That was my thought, too, is like this random woman who has nothing to do with the case, who lives in North Carolina, just decides, she's qualified to start interfering. I hit my funny bone. It hurts. It burns. Anyway, she decides she's going to start interfering in the case and, playing games with the investigators and all this, like faking her identity. It eventually comes out that so far as I can tell, there's no evidence that Don Foster ever actually did accuse her of this. She claims, that like there were like 50 email exchanges. Meanwhile, only ever produces evidence of one email from Don Foster. One. So what I'm sitting here seeing is, all these different emails that she's talking about, sending out messages everywhere, making herself the center of attention. And I'm sitting here going, oh, you're just a narcissist trying to stir the pot. You probably did send him. There probably were 50 emails and you probably sent 49 of them. And until I see further evidence that you didn't, I am going to believe that to be the case. Because as I'm going through, you have 30 pages of documents. They're all the transcript. We're all sitting here on Reddit trying to analyze a couple of screen grabs from an A&E documentary to try and see what it says on this piece of paper. And you've got all of the documents and you just won't provide them. Oh, you got access to DNA analysis that hasn't been made public, but you won't present it. You've got Burke's interviews, but you won't present it. You've got all this information, and you'll show all of it when it makes the intruder theory look good. But anything we ask for that doesn't support the intruder theory, hands off. We don't get to see it. To me, that screams somebody is trying to, like, if you have all of this evidence, and she's firmly intruder theory, if you have all of this evidence, and you're firmly of the belief, after reviewing all of the evidence that you have, that it was an intruder, if that evidence points in that direction, why on earth would you hide it?
Well, we know why.
because it doesn't point that direction.
Exactly.
So, this is my public call out for Susan Bennett Jameson. I mean, you shouldn't have told everybody your real name in a bunch of posts, you idiot. Do the right thing. Drop the files. Maybe you haven't been called out hard enough by a big enough source, but Susan Bennett of North Carolina, that's not doxing. She published that. She also wrote a book called Murdering JonBenet, in which she envisions how it might have happened. Like, we're sitting here being told, hey, look at Santa Bill. His wife wrote a play that was based on a true story about a girl that died. They're guilty because of that. I've seen that exact line of argument made. And then here's this Jameson person who knows everything everybody else doesn't somehow. Who goes ahead and writes a play, and I'm supposed to ignore it? No, I don't think the play means anything in either case, but who is this person? Why do they think they have the right to be here?
Just to clarify, Bennett published this book
Susan
about
Bennett.
JonBenet under her real
under
name.
the name Jameson.
Okay.
But Susan Bennett elsewhere, as in CBS 48 Hours in 1998 apparently, came out and said, I'm Sue Bennett, I'm Jameson. Because she was begging to be let onto the not let onto the grand jury, begging to be allowed to present to the grand jury. I mean, every single thing I've read about this, she also lied a whole bunch about her history.
In what way?
Said that she was a victim of all these different things, then eventually came out and admitted she wasn't. She just said that because she thought that's what people needed to hear.
So a very reliable source, clearly.
This woman has narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. It's got to be one of the two. I mean, and as we know, I correctly identified this in an Instagram user who was convinced that smoking weed while you're pregnant is fine just a few days ago.
What?
Oh, yeah, I got into an Instagram argument with a woman who thinks that smoking weed or consuming weed while you're pregnant is totally fine and has no negative effects. Now, the entire medical consensus is that this is not true, right? I mean, smoking anything at all, it could be grass, like literal grass. That's still bad for the baby. Cannabis? THC? There's a consensus on that one. It's bad. It's bad for fetuses. Like, you should not consume mildly hallucinogenic drugs while pregnant. That should be obvious. Anyway, this woman's arguing with me, and I'm just kind of pointing out how, like, she keeps, like, kind of hinting that, yeah, you should go and say something about this. You should make a video. Go tell your 600,000 YouTube subscribers, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting here like, well, I'm not going to do that because you have 1.5 thousand followers on Instagram. I'm not going to punch down that. Do I think you're a bad, dangerous person who should probably have a CPS visit? Yes. Am I going to bring the entire internet down on you? No, that would be rude. That would be mean. I will let CPS handle it. I didn't call CPS. I'm sure somebody else will. Point is, I kept saying, you obviously have narcissistic personality disorder. Otherwise, you'd be able to tell why everybody thinks you're absolutely insane. The fact that you can't acknowledge that you're wrong and you keep begging for more attention tells me that you have a narcissism issue. Turns out she's diagnosed borderline personality disorder. Yeah. So I was close. I was damn close. I think Chris is in the same boat, Chris Proudfoot. But my reason in bringing up Jameson and all of this is because I feel like as I'm looking through it, Jameson is, if you look back earlier before the internet, you've got people would always, you have people sending letters, calling in, psychics, people claiming they did it, blah, 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 whatever. But it all got kind of funneled because it all went through to the police department and they decided what they told you. The internet comes into play. The website Web Sleuths comes into play, which is apparently a lot older than I thought it was. I thought that was like a mid-2000s. I guess it's late 90s. Web Sleuths comes into play. And then social media. And then suddenly, crime is no longer something that is written about in books. It's no longer something that is talked about on news programs. It's not something that is, for the most part, isolated to the investigative department. It's something else. It's culture. True crime. We get, podcasts and TV shows and all sorts of stuff. Goes from 48 Hours to Netflix has an entire series on the Menendez brothers. Netflix has an entire series on JonBenet Ramsey. And what it creates is an internet subculture where you have all these people who are out there and they're talking about it, they're getting involved. And when it stays on Reddit and TikTok and you've basically got, people like, oh, well, here's what I think about it. Sure. But something really weird happened with the Sebastian Rogers case. something that I've never seen before. I've never seen the parents, the prime suspects as far as the internet are concerned. I have never seen them just go talk to YouTubers. And so what had been if you look at true crime, yeah, there's some controversial stories out there. There's people on both sides of the aisle. And they'll talk about it. They'll fight. They'll have their little wars. But in this specific case, and the same goes for Jameson, because she eventually did get in touch with the Ramseys. In this case with Sebastian Rogers, the Proudfoots first go on actual TV. And then they start going on these podcasts. And they're not huge. They're not going on Sean Ryan. They're not going on Rogan. They're not going on even this show. Even though Chris Proudfoot has a standing invite to come on the show and defend his position. These guys are going everywhere. They're going on 15,000 subscribers, 7,000 subscribers, 25,000 subscribers. Mostly female-led channels, by the way. Seth is everywhere. Seth's on male-led, female-led, big, small, TV, not TV, everywhere he can be. And I'm not saying I think Seth's a saint, but she sure as hell seems like he cares about finding his kid. Chris Proudfoot seems like he cares about controlling the narrative. And you have a bunch of these YouTubers who I think maybe at the beginning they were well-meaning, but they allowed themselves to get emotionally connected to this person and to be, on their side, to have private conversations, to, have, I think there was one thing about somebody having dinner with him at one point. I've never seen that before. And I don't like it. I don't like what I'm seeing. I mean, we went and sat down with Tommy Booth's mom. We had a conversation with her. But there wasn't a whole war going on. We weren't, getting up there and bashing other YouTube channels who disagreed with us. We were getting up there and saying, hey, I think the police are wrong. And I respect the work of the Smiley Face Killers gang, but I think they're wrong too. Here's where we're going with it. And that was the end of it. But what I've seen with Sebastian Rogers is there will be people who go on literally 7-hour live streams. And all they do is get a panel together to talk about Sebastian Rogers. And when you get into the nitty-gritty, they barely talk about Sebastian. It's all about the drama between Chris and Seth and Katie. And Nina and, the parents and the Bauer side. All of it. They become drama podcasts. And that's not what this is supposed to be. I mean, listen, I get it. It's one thing with the Ramseys. It's an old as hell case. We all know who did it. I mean, nobody really doubts it. The two sides here are very lopsided. Sebastian, it doesn't feel that way. And then you get not just YouTubers, but private investigators and lawyers and all these people from different sides who get on and they start yelling at each other. And what I've noticed is the entire thing has moved away from Sebastian Rogers. It is no longer about finding Sebastian Rogers. It is about, my side being right. And I don't like that at all. I mean, I had somebody on Twitter yesterday, I think it was, accuse me of being a mod for Seth's channel. And my response was, I don't have time to do my own live streams, let alone moderate somebody else's, I don't have time. But there's just this default assumption that you're on one side or the other, that you must be biased. You must be part of Team Rogers or Team Proudfoot. There's no other alternative. Nobody considers the fact that you might sit here as a third party going, hey, I have no skin in this game. I just want the kid found. That's inconceivable to a lot of these people. I'm not perfect. I've had my moments, but I don't understand what happened here. And I think it's just, once again, another weird thing where, non-law enforcement, amateur web sleuths, for lack of a better term, and I know the irony. I get it. I understand the irony of me saying this. A lot of these people get involved, and they are so emotionally connected to their point of view that they cannot set aside the biases. And usually it's not a big deal. With the Rogers case, it's not a huge deal. because nobody seems to have, for lack of a better term, classified information. Nobody's got their hands on something nobody else has. But with Jameson, with Sue Bennett, she's got it all. She's got pages of transcripts and DNA analysis and interviews, and we don't get to see it. I mean, I've said for a long time, if I have access to something that would benefit the public's interest, I will release it. Or at the very least, I will offer to release it. Like, I might not just put it up there, but if somebody comes to me and says, hey, can I take a look at that? I'm going to say, yeah, sure, why not? What you doing?
Just checking something.
Okay. But yeah, I feel like I'm talking to myself here.
Sorry, just confirming whether or not the Seth R. Rogers
Oh, yeah, no,
is
that's
actually. Yeah, it is.
Hey, Seth. How you doing?
How's it going?
I'm sorry this is happening to you. I mean, and that was the thing, is I came into this totally unbiased. You might remember in the first video, I didn't say a damn thing about the Proudfoots.
Yeah, no, because the first video that we did was basically the summarization of essentially that first 24 hours in prime focus to Sebastian.
Yep.
What happened, where he might have gone, the search effort, not really anything tangential in terms of history of the people involved or theories about what may or may not have happened or what may happen down the line.
Exactly. So, I mean, it was only once I actually started to look at what Chris Proudfoot was saying. I didn't like it. I did not like what I was seeing.
Well, that's the thing is like, in, you know, some of the things that you mentioned here about drama with the families and such like that, a lot of what we did in the subsequent videos and what you highlighted with his history, with Katie's history, at least to my understanding and the way we went to present it, was this wasn't about the drama of the family.
No.
This was important context to figure out motive of who and why Sebastian was either kidnapped or how he got lost. It's all context to help the search. It's not drama for the sake of drama.
And I mean, when I I even commented, I asked Steve Fisher about one of these things, SF Investigates. He posted something about, I think it was Bullhorn Betty, because the Proudfoots are trying to send her to prison for driving past their house, I guess. I guess there was a protective order and she violated it, but didn't actually, she didn't contact them or anything. I think she just got too close to them while filming something. I don't know the details of it, but anyway, he's posting about that. And I'm like, so this person who clearly is in no way involved. Bullhorn Betty didn't take Sebastian. I can understand if they're being sincere, where they're coming from. Yeah, I get it. You had a protective order. She violated it, blah, 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 blah. What does that have to do with Sebastian Rogers?
Nothing.
Why are you still talking about it? Why is that are you investigating the disappearance of Sebastian Rogers, or are you a PR person? I get it. You're the investigator hired by the family. But if you're going to go out and try and make it public, you're a private investigator, buddy. Unless you're sharing everything you have, keep it to yourself. Because otherwise you're cherry picking and crafting a narrative and nobody can get in there to crack holes in it. You're doing a lawyer's job, not an investigator's job. You're doing a spokesman's job, not an investigator's job. Why are we talking about Bullhorn Betty? So I asked him, I said, Steve, have you taken a look at Chris Proudfoot's court records? And just cascade of replies what does that have to do with anything? He didn't violate a protective order, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here you're right, he didn't violate a protective order. He took one out fraudulently, then had it adjudicated to be not needed. And then he spent 5 years in court trying to reclaim custody of his daughter so that he could rip her away from the only family she's ever known and bring her to some rural village in Tennessee where she is going to be. And here's the thing. I don't like getting into identity politics or any of that, but this is a girl who is Hispanic and Native American and currently lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico with her mother and her grandparents and her other siblings. Seth has spent the better part of a decade now, or not Seth, sorry. Chris has spent the better part of a decade now trying to rip that child out of a place where she is with family who loves her, with her mother, with her siblings, has been enrolled in school for several years, and is, not a complete and total minority. Now, I mean, I have almost exclusively good things to say about the people of Tennessee. I have had great experiences in Tennessee. I love it. I feel like for the most part culturally, I don't see a ton of difference between Tennessee and central Pennsylvania.
Other than food.
Other than the food. Well, central Pennsylvania, the food's spot on.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Philadelphia, Gatlinburg, you could catch up. But
we loved the food down there.
Yeah.
It was just, we as Northerners can only take it for so long. Because,
it's a lot of salt.
Yeah.
I loved the place, loved the people, the food almost killed me.
Yeah.
I loved a lot of it. It was really tasty. It's just like it piles up.
Well, especially with all the hiking we were doing.
Yeah.
Gatlinburg's options for breakfast, lunch, and dinner do not
Very heavy.
very well coincide with multi-day hikes.
Were they delicious? Absolutely. Some of the best breakfast food I had in my life, but
Amazing pancakes.
But my point is, when we were in Townsend, we're two white gentlemen. We're not from Massachusetts. We don't really dress like, Yankees, as you might, you picture like somebody who dresses like Northeast style. We don't do that.
No, we exclusively shop for Winchester chic.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know about you. There were a few occasions, especially when Isaiah wasn't with us, out in more the rural areas, the less touristy areas, where I did not feel particularly welcome. And it was based off of my accent. I wasn't there as a tourist or a carpetbagger. I was there to shoot a video about local stuff. I wasn't trying to exploit anything. I was just down there like, hey, here's a cool story from Tennessee. And I felt uncomfortable in some places. And I get it. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be suspicious of outsiders in places like Townsend, for example. I cannot imagine the situation will be better for a young Hispanic girl.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And these are considerations in custody battles. If you look at the situation, Chris Proudfoot is frequently not home. He works in another city across the state, so he's frequently not home, which means that this girl will be left with her very high needs due to chromosomal deletion syndrome, very high needs autistic older stepbrother, and a stepmother who, I mean, I don't know what words to use, but she does not strike me as particularly involved.
Particularly concerned with childcare.
Yeah. And who also has, according to Nina Gomez, on several occasions, like, traumatized this child. There's no good reason to take Faith out of Albuquerque and bring her to Hendersonville, Tennessee. There is no good reason.
No.
Not a single one. Now, I can see the argument being, well, I'm her dad. I deserve 50-50 custody at least. Well, maybe if you lived in the same state. But you didn't. You not forced, but basically being the husband in the situation, coordinated a move from, I think they were in Albuquerque at the time, Albuquerque to a small town in Tennessee. You then went ahead and tried to separate a mother from her daughter. All of this was very deliberate, by the way, if you look at the order of events. And then when you lost that case and she fled to New Mexico, you continued to spend multiple years fighting for it, realizing that with each passing year, the list of reasons that Faith would be better off in Tennessee dwindles more and more. I also think, I don't think Chris gives a damn about that child. I think he just wants to hurt Nina.
Yeah, it's a thing entirely out of spite.
Yeah. I don't think Faith would be better off in Tennessee. And Chris doesn't think Faith would be better off in Tennessee either, as we can tell from the fact that he made a significant effort to get Sebastian out of the home. There's a lot of people who have suggested, and I haven't found the proof of this yet. A lot of people have suggested that Chris gave Katie an ultimatum that was, it's Sebastian or it's me. Doesn't look like, if that's true, that Katie picked Sebastian. In my mind, this all comes down to the custody case with Faith. In my mind, this is all about getting Faith.
Well, and you pretty explicitly went through the details of the reasons for that.
Yeah.
In both the original videos that we made and the most recent compilation we just did.
And what is astonishing to me is that somehow that stuff is not the topic of conversation. It's drama. It's Bullhorn Betty. It is Dog the Bounty Hunter. It is SF Investigates. It's JLR. All these different people who are somehow the topics of conversation. And this, I'm not trying to like go out there and be like, hey, none of you get to do this. Only I get to do this. No, that's not my point. My point is when you have become the topic of conversation rather than the avenue for conversation, you have become an obstruction. And I'm seeing that from a lot of people, several people on both sides of this, by the way. I'm not going to name names. I don't want to be attacking people. It needs to be about Sebastian, just like it needed to be about JonBenét. But instead, it became about, SF Investigates, and it became about Jameson. And what's weird to me, too, about this whole thing, and what I think is a very important comparison, and there was another case where I am to this day closely in contact with the parent. Has that parent ever made an appearance on this show?
Not yet.
Not one of you has seen Gabby Petito's mother. Not one of you has seen her brother. I have both of their phone numbers. I have spoken to both of them multiple times. Had a 6-hour phone conversation with Nicole at one point. They haven't been on this show. They haven't been on any shows. And what was the result? It was a court proceeding that wasn't mired in random true crime community drama, even though the case was all over social media. But the parents kept it in the courtroom where it belonged. And to be perfectly honest, I'm disgusted with the outcome. I think justice was not served. I mean, you look at it, the Laundrie is absolutely new. There is no question in my mind that Roberta Laundrie knew that her son murdered Gabby.
I think that's a case we should revisit in the near future.
Oh, we will. I know there's another Netflix one coming out on it.
There's another Netflix one coming out on it?
I don't think there's a Netflix one on Gabby yet. Not a full, not to the level they did JonBenét.
Oh, wasn't there something though?
I think there was something, but Netflix is doing the same thing they did with JonBenét.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was my understanding last time I talked to Nicole, at least.
Got it.
So there were things, basically the family was hamstrung with what they could say until that comes out.
Yep.
So when it comes out, I'm going to do exactly what I did with JonBenét, and I'm going to go through it and be like, all right, here's everything Netflix left out. Unless they didn't leave everything out. Maybe they did a good job. Who knows? So far, it looks like the Petito side is happy with what's happened. Maybe they did a good job. Maybe I won't have to do that. But, as somebody who has that in, when the time comes, I'm going to go back and revisit it. That was how it should have been done. What did the Petitos do? They reached out to a few influential people. They said, hey, can you tell this story about their daughter missing? And then they went to the courts.
About that with you in the beginning.
Yeah. So right when it happened, I think like the day, I think it was like the day it went public.
Mm-hmm.
A kid named TJ reached out to me. He had been a follower of mine on TikTok for a little while. And I've been talking about all the missing 411 stuff. And he basically was like, I never thought I'd be asking this, but my sister is missing and it kind of matches the criteria you talk about. So I made a video, and the next day it was everywhere. It wasn't everywhere the next day because of me. It was just everywhere. And that's how I became involved. So over time, I got a chance to talk to TJ a few times. I got a chance to talk to Nicole. Actually asked Nicole for her opinion on the JonBenet Ramsey stuff. And that was it. Did she have a long phone conversation with me when I did our full video on it in November of 2022? Yeah, she did. Wasn't public. Wasn't out there for people to analyze and rip apart, and then she didn't go on another show and another show and another show and another show and contradict herself a whole bunch of times. There are ways to handle these things that allow people to do the hard-hitting journalism without turning it into a cesspit of drama. And I don't understand why, I mean, this far out, I don't get why I post about Sebastian. I post a 3-hour-long, heavily researched, fact-based documentary. And I've got people on Twitter coming at me saying, oh, you're biased. You work for Seth Rogers. I've never taken a dime from Seth Rogers. Not even in a super chat. Something's not right about the way this is being handled, and it's becoming very clear. And I think that at this point, it can almost be defined as a strategy. I mean, Chris Proudfoot successfully turned this case into a true crime YouTuber drama instead of an investigation into where his stepson is. I just... the depths of my hatred for this man. I don't know. I just think it's so interesting how history keeps rhyming. And I worry that the kind of interference we're seeing from certain people is going to be the same kind of thing like with Jameson. That, I mean, if not for Jameson, nobody questions Don Foster. I mean, supposedly, the Ramsey attorneys had a letter he sent to Patricia all along. Sent to Patsy where he said that he didn't think she did it. But here's what I'm interested in. He's never come out and said this, but I noticed a bit of a pattern of my own. In the stuff Jameson said, he had sent her an email. Very complimentary. You're one of the only people I'm seeing with, educated, intelligent, calm messaging about this. And that opened a dialogue. And then I see he sends a letter to Patsy where he says, I don't think it was you at all. I know it wasn't you. I think I could help. I think he wanted samples. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm giving the guy too much credit. But if you're suspicious of somebody, and he was suspicious that Jameson might be John Andrew, according to Jameson, if you're suspicious of somebody, I'm not going to just tell him, hey, I think you did it. Now give me all the reasons to believe you did.
Yeah, you're not going to do that if you want to successfully do what you need to do.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. I gotta say, just off the I have all of these documents and I'm not sharing them thing alone, Jameson, you're a bad person, and you should feel bad. Also, writing a play, you're weird. That was a weird thing to do. Stop being strange. Like, turn over what you've got, show us the transcripts, show us the documents, show us the analysis, whatever it is, you're not implicated.
I gotta say, I'm surprised that you think Jameson actually has the stuff they say they have.
If they don't, it would be great for us to know that this person is completely unreliable and not just spotty. Yeah, that's a public call out right there. If you got this stuff, show us.
Or
you're active on Reddit. I know you're still here. Said something like 15 days ago.
And there's no good reason not to share it at that point.
There isn't. I mean, if you've got 30 pages of a transcript with Burke Ramsey, the police conducted that interview. The police conducted this interview with Burke Ramsey. 30-page interview. You've got him. Burke Ramsey's never been arrested. What are you afraid of me reading? what's in the transcript.
You said that there have not been any mentions of this interview anywhere else?
There are, I just hadn't come across them yet.
Got it. Oh, that's right. In Kohler's
yeah.
book, you said there was one, because I was
Yeah.
going to say, it was like, are we even sure this interview actually
It
happened?
did actually, that was my thinking too, as I saw it, and I was like, I have found nothing about this. It happened. Just nobody's ever released the full transcript.
It's shocking to me considering...
I get why Kohler didn't, because
Yeah.
he's law enforcement. Jameson's just a person
Yeah.
who has a very inflated sense of her self-worth.
But so, when were the first interviews with John and Patsy?
April 30th,
So how
1997.
how'd they manage to get an interview with Burke?
So according to Kohler, it has to do with the Department of Social Services.
I see.
I guess that as part of the procedure when a child dies in the home, the surviving children are separated from the parents and from the other family members. And I guess that due to the nature of the crime, maybe they didn't need permission from John and Patsy to conduct the interview. They might have had it, but they might not have needed it. And then arguably the only reason that John and Patsy agreed to the interview with Dr. Susan Bernhard 2 weeks later, was because if they didn't agree to it, Child Protection Services could come in and say, hey, he's our kid now. Interview him. So by allowing the interview, they were able to ensure that they had some demands met, such as he's not allowed to be interrogated by a police officer. It has to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But what I want to know is why not, if that transcript does not suggest Burke had something to do with it, why are you not revealing it? Why are you just being cagey about it? Why are you telling me what is and isn't in it? It seems very, very sketchy to me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make a list. Maybe I'll leverage our community. We got a lot of people in that Discord.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll leverage our community and say, hey, I need you to comb through all of Jameson's Reddit posts. I need you to tell me what she says she has, what she says she refuses to release. Maybe instead of just sitting here going, I'm frustrated, maybe we should do a video on all the things Susan Bennett refuses to share with the rest of us. Or she could just share. But she's made herself a public person. She said, I'm Jameson.
I don't know. Video title to me sounds like the woman who threw the JonBenet Ramsey case, essentially.
Yep.
I mean, it's just rough title, but sounds like a good video.
Yeah, I mean, I sit here and I'm like, you know what? That information's got to get out somehow. It's not a threat, by the way. We cover a lot of different things. Not saying do this or else we will. Just saying maybe it would benefit the public to know what Jameson refuses to release. Just a thought.
I mean, to me, it sounds like there's two options. One is that really there's three,
There's
but
three.
I consider it unlikely, the third option.
What do you think they are?
The three things I think are likely to happen, the two most likely are one,
We get sued.
we'll probably get sued no matter what. But the first one being that the information somehow is not able to be released because
Even
it's
though-
too vital.
It is in the hands of a private citizen.
Yes. It's refused to be released primarily because it probably doesn't exist.
Oh, wait, really quickly here. I just wanted to check and make sure.
Yep.
Ready? Because I sent a message on
Yep.
Instagram to Jameson
Mm.
earlier tonight, directly asking about this. I have not heard back.
Mhm.
Just want to check and make sure we were still good on that.
Yep.
My question was, why aren't you sharing?
Yeah. Understandably so.
I mean, I understand that was like, so-and-so did not respond to our request for comment when I sent the request for comment 5 minutes before the deadline, but still, we continue.
Yeah.
What happened? What are our likely options here, or likely outcomes?
Yep. So I think one is that the information is not released because it doesn't exist.
That's possible.
Yep. I think the second option is that it is not released because of some reason. I'm sure it'll be really thorough, but also really BS.
Yep.
And then the third option is that the information is released and all of the hypotheses and suggestions previously made will be almost immediately recognized to be false, or at least heavily misleading.
I get the feeling you might be right about basically any of those.
Yeah.
I think another option too is that Jameson does in fact have all of this stuff, and just sues us. Like,
On what grounds?
defamation, probably.
It's all speculative.
It is. Wouldn't be the first time somebody sued somebody for something stupid. But no,
A lot of money to waste on a lawsuit.
it
you
is.
won't win.
But this is a woman who wrote a play about the murder of JonBenet Ramsey in which she is somehow a character. Like, wrote herself into. Honestly, at that point, look at Jameson. What do serial killers do? They
Yeah.
involve themselves.
This would be an extremely
Wouldn't that be wild?
insane case of that. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be crazy? I don't think that's what it is. I don't think Jameson had anything to do with it. But I think, we've already had one person in this case who was exonerated by DNA evidence, who inserted himself and admitted to doing it and then was found definitively to have not.
Mhm.
I do love that, like, I pointed out to some people on Reddit, like, John Mark Carr did not have the story right. Like, there were multiple places where he did not, he had his details wrong.
Yeah, I can't wait till we get to that episode.
Oh, I'm
when
so
you go through
excited.
it, considering how many things that Netflix
I
blatantly
am
left
so
out.
looking forward to it.
As a film person, it pains me. It pains me to say that about Netflix because I know people who've worked there.
Mhm.
There are a lot of great people who work there.
Netflix makes a lot of good stuff. Just
They
their
do.
documentaries are not on the list.
Hmm.
The people involved, just the subculture that's kind of sprung up. I've talked to some good people on the Intruder Did It side, but there's also some who just their whole goal is, I want to be right. I mean, people who, for example, there's one person who posted some excerpts from the deposition of Steve Thomas. Didn't posted it like, look at all these things Steve Thomas is saying. Can't you tell he had no business being on this case? Meanwhile, like, you sit there and you read it with the understanding that it's a deposition, that he's being sued,
Mhm.
and that his goal in the deposition is not to incriminate himself in a way that makes him lose money.
Yep.
So if there's a statement where he says, I don't know, or he asks multiple clarifying questions, that's him making sure a lawyer doesn't get one over on him. And the lawyer trying to get one over on him was a guy who is now known for spreading false information in order to get himself into the spotlight. Looking at you, L. Lynn Wood, and your claims about the 2020 election. I mean, like, that election could have been completely fraudulent, and you still didn't make a point. Like somebody at Washington Post could drop it tomorrow, like, we have undoubted proof that the election was stolen, and Lynn Wood would still be wrong. Like, that's how far off the mark he was. He had nothing. He's like, we have the evidence. There was none. And I don't mean like, this is not a commentary on that entire controversy. I mean, he specifically had nothing. Never. Ever. There was nothing. And yet, somehow, we're still parading this guy's deposition around in the JonBenet case like he's somebody we should listen to.
Well, because people don't do their research or their due diligence.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. I mean, there have been things I've been wrong about in this case, but I've been coming out and admitting them as they happen. Because that's less embarrassing than trying to hide it and people finding out later.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather be embarrassed right now, right after I made the mistake, rather than 20 years from now when I have a legitimate career.
Yeah. Well, because also, like, acknowledging when you're wrong only positively affects your career.
Mm-hmm.
If you figure out that you're wrong and you say, oh, my bad.
What do you remember JFK for most?
I mean, other than that one thing.
Other than that one thing.
Well, there was also the element of him wanting to get rid of the CIA and
That too.
2000 BC.
All right, let me put it this way. What was the thing they hammered into our heads about JFK in high school?
He was Catholic.
Okay, apparently we had different high school experiences because for me, it was he owned up to the Bay of Pigs. He said
no,
Bay
we
of
did not
Pigs was a
cover that.
disaster. It was his fault. He was sorry. That was all on him. And it was just heaped onto us. Look at this accountability from a public figure. Isn't this great? Pay no attention to the fact that it never happens anymore. Like, do you know how baller it would be if George Bush got up there and he was like, now listen, invading Iraq was a little bit of a mistake. I will own up to that one. I think we'd all have some respect for the guy.
I was quail hunting with Cheney. I didn't want to risk it.
That was a good one. Didn't want to risk it. Oh, God. But, it's stuff like that, hammered into us. Accountability is good. Accountability is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, nobody has accountability anymore because it affects their bottom line.
Yeah. Well, that's what gets me with Jameson. What's your dude? Or dudette, I guess? What's your plan? What's the point? Why aren't you sharing? What is in it for you if it wasn't the family? What is in it for you if it was the family?
Psychologically?
I don't know. Maybe, yeah.
Oh, no. But psychologically, it makes...
Thing?
Oh, Hunter, I think it makes perfect sense. Because the moment she gives away the information, she's no longer special.
That's true, yeah.
And has no longer any voice
point.
in the matter.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems like a situation where you had somebody who was on Web Sleuths in 1998, or like 1997, I guess, who saw the opportunity to maybe have her 15 minutes, and when she didn't get it, started doing everything in her power to hang on to it.
Yep.
So
I'm convinced from everything that you've said tonight that she has none of the information, that none of it was ever even remotely given to the public, but because it was never given to the public, she's confident in being able to say she has it because no one's ever going to get access to it.
That is possible. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you this, somebody ever sends me a confidential file, is like, and I look at the file and I go, oh, this could crack the case if the public just knew about it. That file is going on the internet.
Well, that actually directly correlates with the first relevant super chat that we got.
Oh, what was it?
That super chat was from Anonymous13 for $1.99 saying, are you guys open to or allowed to share case files?
I mean, in the case of Tommy Booth, I would ask for the sole reason that I have respect for his parents. I mean, like individual to individual, if I had case files, yeah, probably. If it was something like that, I might ask for permission before posting it publicly, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if I have case files and I think that they could help, my goal is I want more people to be aware. If something happened, I want the most people possible to know about it. So.
Yeah, understandably so. Yeah, Kellen made a point about how unusual it is to have cameras inside but not outside.
Weird.
Yeah.
Also super weird that somebody who works for Brinks installing those cameras doesn't want to talk about them. She should know the ins and outs. She should know everything about them.
Every case that we cover that is in relation to the parents or step-parents, whoever is relevant, being suspects versus not, the biggest difference is who they talk to first, in the sense of, do they talk to and cooperate with the authorities prior to the media, if the media at all, or do they go running to the media first? And specifically, if they do go into the media, how they react to questions and what kind of information they provide and what the focus is. Because anytime anyone is cagey about anything, it already begins to be suspicious. And anytime people generally seem to not be guilty, whether in the moment or later after the fact we find out it definitely wasn't them, extremely forward, extremely upfront, really nothing held back, unless it was something completely irrelevant to the case.
It's almost like, I would never use this in a courtroom, but people with nothing to hide typically don't hide it. I mean, the Ramseys were dodging the police before the police even intimated that the Ramseys were suspects. And they said they were doing it on the advice of their lawyers. What did the lawyers know? I mean, it's December 26th. It's the day this happened. And your lawyers are telling you don't say anything to the police. Anything, not make sure we're present. Just don't say anything.
And that's a key point.
And then fighting it for 4 months.
I think it's also a key point to recognize is like, it's not bad to have lawyers in the room with you, because there are great police officers and cops out there, and there are not so great police officers and cops out there. And there are people who want a case closed more than they want the right person behind bars.
True.
So especially in those instances, it's important to have your lawyers there so a lazy detective doesn't incriminate you because they don't feel like doing this job. The problem is that depending on how well you know your local area or not, it's almost impossible to know ahead of time what kind of law enforcement you're dealing with. So it's a safe bet to have them there.
Never talk to the officer who's arresting you, but talk to the cops with a lawyer. That, I mean, time and time again, in every case I've seen, that has been the best advice. Like, cops show up and they're, interviewing day of, you're like, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I have a lawyer present. They're like, okay. They might look at you suspiciously, but if you then go into the interrogation room with your lawyer and your lawyer sits next to you and tells you which questions to answer and not answer, a little harder to claim you didn't cooperate. They didn't cooperate. I mean...
And by that, you mean the Ramseys?
Yeah. The day of, they are answering questions, but then contradicting themselves. They are trying to get on flights to Atlanta. They are, as we find out later on, lying about their movements on the day that things happened. Nothing about the Ramseys screamed innocent. Everything screamed guilty. So there was a very good reason to be investigating them, especially when the FBI comes in and says, hey, it's almost always the parents in cases like this. The FBI said that the first day. And when you think about it, had the Ramseys just gone in on December 27th and sat for those interviews, the police knew nothing on the 27th. Nothing at all. If the Ramseys gone in on the 27th, cops would have asked them a whole bunch of questions, and then they probably would have gone home, and the cops would probably have moved on. Or who knows? Maybe they would have picked up on something. Maybe later on they'd have come back. But the immediate story wouldn't be the Ramseys avoided the police. You wouldn't have somebody nearly 30 years later sitting here going, all of the evidence points against them, and if they had just talked to the cops at first, I wouldn't be so suspicious. I legitimately, if the Ramseys had gone to the police, very first day, walked in and said, hey, I'm ready for my interview. Here's my lawyer, but I'm ready for my interview. I'd have been like, oh, that makes sense. That's what you should do. Instead, they spend about 5 months, really. 4 months, January, February, March, April. They spend 4 months insisting to the media that they're cooperating. And then they turn around and they avoid the police. Like, you're just heaping suspicion onto yourself at that point. Like, I was a little suspicious that John refused to sit for an interview at first, considering how fine he seemed. But as it goes on longer and longer and longer and longer, and there's more and more evasion, and there's more of the lawyers doing things like saying, hey, you can't test those samples. Like, I mean, I'm reading through the interview they gave on the 1st of January, 1997. A little sneak peek of next week's video. John lies within literally the first 30 seconds.
Really?
Yeah. One of the first things that they say is, Brian Cable asks, hey, why did you decide that you wanted to sit down and be on TV now? And John says, well, we've been totally isolated for the last 5 days. They were staying with friends and family the whole time. They weren't isolated. They could have walked in and talked to the police at any time. They could have walked out and talked to the media at any time. They were staying with friends. They were staying with family. They weren't isolated. There, in no way does the term isolated describe their situation. And then he goes on to say seconds later that, everyone's been there for them. Family, friends, coworkers, everyone's been so great. They've all, people have been sending us letters, people have been coming by to visit. But so you open with this appeal to emotion. We've just been so lonely and isolated after our daughter passed away. Then seconds later, you're talking about the outpouring of support and how everybody has made you feel so warm. How do you, it's so obvious that they went into it with okay, we need to present ourselves as sympathetic, as mourning parents, as victims, da-da-da-da-da. And that was apparently all they thought ahead because they contradict themselves the very next moment. There was another thing I'm trying to remember what was it. It was from the interview. Oh, God. I even had it highlighted.
I can pull up your notes.
You can. Yeah, go ahead. Pull them up. I'm trying to remember what it is. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips.
Yeah. If you want to, JonBenet right there. And then the CNN interview.
Hey, we gotta.
Yeah, it was very zoomed in. Yeah. Should be somewhere in there.
CNN interview.
Right. Take a look.
Isolated, totally isolated for the last 5 days. As at this, we were fortunate. We were fortunate from almost the moment that we found the note to be surrounded by friends, our minister, our family, our doctor, a personal friend of mine who is an attorney, and we relied on their guidance almost from that moment and on. My friend suggested it would be foolish not to have knowledgeable counsel to help both us and with the investigation. Oh, to both help us and with the investigation. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
There's the one right below that.
Okay. John saying, not because we're angry, but because we have got to go on.
Yeah. Your daughter was murdered in your home 5 days ago. Your emotions are not angry.
No, it should be furious, seething, cannot wait to find the monster who did this.
Yeah.
Like a variety of things, much greater than anger.
It's a very interesting thing they do throughout the investigation, by the way. They'll say, we're not angry. We just want to move on. We just want, first of all, if my dog was murdered 5 days later, it wouldn't be, I'm not angry. I just want to find who did this so I can move on. It would be, I'm furious and I want to find who did this so I can string them up. And there's another thing is throughout that interview, they leave out details about the crime that if you knew those details at the time, you would have been looking at the screen going, what do you mean you're not angry?
Yeah.
What do you mean you're not angry? But they leave them out. And I think it's because if people knew the truth, if people knew what the Ramseys knew, they'd look at him and go, what's wrong with you? There's another interview later. There's a pastor. I think this was a couple of years later. A pastor who's talking to him. Because, they always make these appeals to, we're a good Christian family who doesn't believe in charity. Just want to, mine's real. Sit down with a pastor and he's like, after this conversation, I will probably have questions from other pastors that are, should I let these people into my church or these good people? What do you think? And I have to ask you that question, what should I tell them? He's basically trying to prod them into giving him a reason. Give me something that I can say that will make you guys look innocent to the Christian community. And John Ramsey sits there and goes, well, I mean, even if we were murderers, would we not be welcome in the church? Patsy's like, isn't the church a place for, sinners and for the idea that the church is a hospital for sinners, not a clubhouse for the faithful. It's that concept.
Got it.
And they don't say we're innocent. They don't say we could never kill our daughter. It's even if we were murderers, I'd hope we would still be allowed in church. I mean, church for these people wasn't a religious experience. It wasn't where you went to feel communion with God. It was a place where you went to be seen. It was a place where you went to show off. You wanted to make sure you were in your church community because that was the thing to do, especially down south where Patsy's from. Oh, your church is the center of your community. So for them, the church isn't a hospital for the sinners. It isn't a hospital for the sinners. The church isn't a place to feel closer to Jesus. The church is just the community center. And we're, rich and important, and we need to be visible in the church. If we were to lose the church, we'd have nothing. That's the attitude they carry. I mean, I am disgusted. Thank God Chris and Katie Proudfoot haven't said anything about Christianity, but I'm pretty sure Chris couldn't step into a church if he wanted to. I think he'd burn.
It is shocking to me just how frequently this pattern comes across in not just with people involved in these kinds of criminal cases, but just societally as a whole. There seems to be such a level of focus on social status in things that are totally irrelevant to status.
Yep.
Like church, like, giving in, charitable circumstances.
You know the one thing that should tell me that you're wealthy is in a church? An engraved pew. When I go to church, I don't want to see, I don't want to think about how much richer the person next to me is. First of all, that's not the point of Christianity at all. But it shouldn't be a place where you're being seen. That's not the goal. And yet, what did the Ramseys do for that memorial service? Their PR team made sure that the church was perfectly set up for the news crews. Instead of going out the side door, they would have typically gone out for a memorial service. Oh, they had they took advantage of all the parishioners. They took advantage of the congregation. They took advantage of the priest. They told the reverend, it's like, he's like, all right, let's form up, a corridor for the family to, so that they can get out to their cars safely, their motorcade that's out there, motorcade of luxury cars to take them to the airport, so that a private jet could fly them to Atlanta. And so all of this is planned. There's going to be a corridor made of people. It's going to be this beautiful thing. And then their PR person told the media, told them exactly where to be, exactly when to be there. Because it was all a setup. It was all to portray the grieving family. All along. There was nothing real about Patsy Ramsey. She'd been fake since the moment she was 13 and decided she wanted to be a pageant girl. I mean, everything in her life at that point, if you can look at her, you can listen to her talk, you can listen to her mom talk, everything in Patsy's life was pageantry. The whole thing through and through, from the beginning to the end. And I mean, there's some disgusting stuff from Steve Thomas's interviews with Nedra, where it's talking about, you got to start him young, otherwise they'll never be able to catch up. That's why John, and seeing Patsy's like, no, JonBenét wanted to do it. Yeah, when I was 4, I wanted to be a pirate. My parents didn't buy me a galleon and send me off into the Bahamas.
God, I wish mine did.
I wish. It wouldn't sick. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
They talk about, JonBenét loves pageants. She loves doing them. Meanwhile, there's all these other accounts of her, telling people she felt like she wasn't pretty enough at the age of 6.
Yeah, definitely a healthy environment to be raising a young girl.
Oh, you're getting, I think, at least 1, potentially 2 of Nedra's interviews. Not this Friday, but next. Getting the Burke one, you're going to get I'm trying to get through, I'm going to do my best. And this may break down so that this episode's interviews and the next episode is evidence from this time period. We'll see how it goes. There is a lot of interesting stuff in those interviews. And I am very much looking forward to going through each of them. I wish the Ramseys were as stupid as the Proudfoots. Because it would be very nice to just go and watch them say all of it. But instead with the Ramseys, I kind of have to deal with the versions the media has left up on the internet and the versions that the police have released and the versions the Ramseys have put out. So I don't get an unedited, unfiltered view of it. I mean, I got to say, one person that I said I have nothing good to say about in Friday's video is Cluminati, which I would be a lot nicer, Clue, if your thumbnails and titles weren't so unbelievably uselessly crude. I mean, you're talking here about like, I see people all the time, oh, you're going after a grieving set of parents. Like, that's not fair. Meanwhile, those same people turn around and make fun of Seth and are just absolute dicks about him. I mean, fact of the matter is, Seth didn't have anything to do with the disappearance. Point blank. He didn't. It wasn't him. He has an alibi. He was not there. The only person who has no alibi here is Katie.
Also, speaking of Seth, a little earlier in the chat, there was a super chat about it. He was asking if we could send over the files that we have on the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Seth, I will clean everything up and send it right to you. You just got to know where to send it.
Yeah, if you could just send an email at thelorelodge@gmail.com. That way we know where to send it to.
I got notes. I got transcripts. I got dates. I got times. So, I can't say it's nothing that has not been put out there before, but I think when you put it all into one document, it becomes very clear why I'm suspicious. So, yeah, I will absolutely share that. I just need to know where to send it.
Nice. Before we go to the next super chat, I guess, so just wrapping up that element about the Ramseys in particular and with the interviews, what is your overall goal / hope for the video that we're going to be filming this Friday, coming out next Friday about the interviews?
Well, I mean, as with all of the previous three, my goal is to be unbiased. I understand how funny that must sound after this episode, but I am trying not to tell people what to think, which is going to become harder as we get through the interviews. And what I'm going to have to do is start telling you just where there was a contradiction, where there was a lie from both sides. No, my goal with this next video is for people to understand what happened between the Ramseys appearing on CNN for that first time and them finally stepping into an interview room with the police. That's what I want. That's what I want people to see. And I mean, as always, with the whole case, what I want people to understand, the way I have formed this, way I've constructed it, is so that people understand what the police knew at what point and why they didn't know more. Because one of the tragedies of this case has been that a whole bunch of good police officers were thrown to the wolves for no reason. So I want to, in some ways, I'm trying to help people understand why the case isn't the way it's been portrayed. Why Steve Thomas isn't a villain, why James Kohler isn't a villain, why Lou Smit is not a hero. Not that I have anything against Lou Smit. I think he was just blinded. I think he couldn't see past that naivety to think that parents couldn't do this. I mean, if you look at it, that's what he says over and over again, his parents couldn't do this. Parents couldn't do this. Parents wouldn't do this. Meanwhile, Steve Thomas is sitting there like it's happened 11,000 times since 1972. Oh, did see an interesting notification earlier. I want to take a look.
Fair. Next chat that would be relevant was from Cam Boone, who's been a member for 20 months.
Damn, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Says, true crime podcasts be like content rules everything around me, which has a nice little fun acronym. Get the money, dollar bills, y'all.
Oh, thank you. I do enjoy the dollar bills.
You did not hear that.
I did not. There was something about the Ketty Cab murders that came up. What was it?
Got it. He's essentially criticizing the fact that most true crime podcasts generally along the lines of the content is for the bills.
Yeah.
So that is.
Oh, I thought he was saying get those dollar bills on our end from the super chats. No.
I'm...
So not thank you then. I see what you're coming from, and I should pay more attention to the super chats. They're being read rather than allowing myself to get distracted by somebody saying that there are photos of Jameson inside the house with Lou Smit.
Interesting. So
yeah, sorry, that was what I wanted to look at, and so I'd only half heard you read the super chat.
Fair. No.
But that's why I was like that. I was like, I remembered something on my phone came up that was important. That's what it was.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah, it's frustrating that a lot of channels get into it for the money, and when there's no money to be had, the attention.
Yeah.
For us, it was always just about telling some cool stories.
Yeah.
Like that's why we started. I don't know how we got here.
You got a history degree, I got a film degree, and then the universe was essentially like, you're going to talk about crimes.
Dude, for like 2 years, we were actively avoiding true crime.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple that came up that were just like, wait just a minute.
Some like literally directly reached out to us, i.e. the Petito case.
That one was the one I think that did it for me. What I really think brought us into this sphere was the smiley face killer stuff.
Yeah.
Because that was, people think this was an accident. Was it actually a crime? And then that turned into, yeah, well, it was a crime. It was definitely a crime.
You think we'll ever finish that series?
I plan to. I want to go back and do another deep dive into Tommy Booth with the case file now that I have it. But I also want to, Tommy's mom said that she could potentially get us in contact with some of the other moms. So I wanted to go and take some time, sit down. And in order to do that without it feeling like we were just rehashing stuff, I wanted to give it some more time.
Yeah, understandably so.
But I would like to go and sit down and actually do interviews with people and redo those so that they're a little bit more in depth. And, you know, I feel like I know more now, too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Holding Karens for $5 said, hey, Aiden, just asking, but what is the likelihood that Sebastian was trafficked? And if so, what would be the potential chances of finding him?
So I would say him being trafficked is more on the unlikely side. Do I think it's a possibility? Yes. Unfortunately, I see it as very unlikely that a child who has the needs he has would survive being trafficked. So I don't think so. I don't think he would be if he was trafficked. I think he's never being found if he's been trafficked. Because I just don't think that. I don't think he would last. Now, what are the chances that's what happened? In my opinion, pretty low. I think it's more likely that he was abducted and stashed with the family. That was what I thought was the most likely up until a couple of months ago when it became clear to me that, like, it'd be hard to hide a 15-year-old kid that long, especially one who has to go to the doctor as frequently as Sebastian does. At this point, unfortunately, I think the most likely outcome is that he is no longer with us. And I still feel that Chris Proudfoot is directly responsible in some way. But hey, Chris, Seth's here. Where are you? If Seth wants to come on the show, I'll have him. If you want to come on the show, I'll have you. Where are you?
Next is for $10 is saying, which case do you think was handled worse, the Ramsey case or the Rogers case?
Oh, Ramsey.
Really?
Oh my God, yes.
Tell me why.
The level of just deliberate misdirection in the Ramsey case and the extent to which it was entrenched within the Boulder justice system is mind-boggling. I mean, as far as I'm aware, with Sebastian Rogers, we don't have the deputy district attorney delivering letters on behalf of the defendant to the state investigative agency telling them, hey, don't do that. Like, there was, with the Ramsey case, it wasn't the justice system versus the Ramseys. It was the police versus the justice system who were actively running cover for the Ramseys.
Which is just insane.
Yeah. I mean, DA Hunter coming out and saying that, you know, they weren't going to indict, despite the fact that's what the grand jury wanted to do. I mean...
And remind me again how long that information was sealed?
Like 13 years or something. I mean, Hunter, who very well knew how bad it looked for the Ramseys. Just for some reason.
I would love to see whether it's us sometime down the line or somebody else capable and interested in this case in particular, do a specific deep dive on Alex Hunter.
Yeah.
Because we've covered some of the stuff about him, but even just the surface level elements that show his blatant attempts to skirt justice in order to make his life easier is shocking.
Maybe one day. Maybe he's part of this. Oh, he gets introduced soon. You guys haven't been introduced to Alex Hunter yet in our series.
Oh yeah, I guess most of the conversation we've had about him has been
You thought
outside of the.
you thought the way I laid into Deputy DA Hofstrom was rough? Oh boy. Oh, I'm not going to be nice to Hunter.
I think it's you then. I think it's you that needs to do the DA that derailed the Ramsey case.
Yeah. Maybe. I'll see. I'll see how. Maybe he deserves it. He's an old man. I don't know if he's even still alive, but we'll see.
Patrick McNeely for $5 is saying, conspiracy time, what if all these people are being paid off to mislead the true facts of the case by doing misleading true crime podcasts?
Chris Proudfoot doesn't have that kind of money.
But we know somebody who does.
Who? What are you thinking about?
John?
Oh, no, with John? Yeah, John's absolutely. I think that was more about the Rogers shit. No.
I was taking this both.
Yeah. But yeah, Ramsey definitely had the money. I don't think Chris Proudfoot is rich enough or intelligent enough to pull that kind of thing off. In fact, I think if he was smart, he wouldn't have talked to a single podcaster. If he's at all smart, he won't talk to me. But here's the thing. I'm not sure his ego will allow him not to.
He's avoided us though so far.
He has. We'll see.
I'd be really curious to see a conversation between you and Chris. I mean, obviously us and Chris, but primarily you and Chris, in a very similar way as to how the conversation with Austin ended up going.
See, here's what's great for me about this when it comes to Chris. I have a stepfather. I can't even recognize what I've heard about Chris as a stepfather because mine was just nowhere near him. Like, my stepfather did so many good things for me in my life. I sit here and I don't understand. Like, I'm like, how as a stepfather can you behave this way? I wasn't treated that way. Nobody I know who has a step parent was treated that way. And there are people, he is a stepdad. I'm like, yeah, my stepdad treated me like I was his flesh and blood. Like I was born to him. There has never been a moment in my entire life for the 24 years he's been involved in it where I felt like I was not seen as a son. So I just don't get it with Chris. Like, what is this behavior? Why do you talk about your stepson this way? And then also, I have an autistic little brother. I have experience with Chris Proudfoot's kind, with this situation. I know what it's like to be in a home with an autistic child. I know what it's like to be in a home with a step parent, with two step parents. There's stuff that he can't lie about to me because I know. So we'll see. I don't think he's got. It's an interesting conundrum for him. The smart thing to do is to not talk to me. But if he doesn't, no balls. Coward. Will talk to random true crime girlies with 15,000 subscribers because he thinks that he can control the narrative. But he's afraid of me. That's all I can gather from this. He's got to know we exist, right?
Considering the history of this case and who he's talked to and how many people he's talked to, I'd be shocked if he didn't.
I mean, also the people who he does talk to are now talking about me. So, are you scared? Are you a real baby boy? You scared? Scared, Chris? Do you need a blanket?
I don't think I've ever wanted somebody to come on the show more.
Oh, I would love it. It would be chumming sharks, dude. He won't. He won't do it. He doesn't need that big truck for work. He needs it to feel good about himself because something else is real small. I'm telling you. You know why you're on wife number 5? I think it might be because you couldn't perform enough. I think that might be it. That's why you got the truck. I mean, if I bought a truck for work, like I'm buying a Jeep Gladiator, right? I know that it needs to be above a certain weight. I know what is different between the years. I know that some of them have a certain engine type that I might want. It's because I want a truck. You know the kind of guy who has a truck but doesn't know what year it is, even though it was bought in the last 4? A guy who wants a truck because something else is small.
I was going to say, coming from somebody who owns a truck and knows way too many details about their truck, I can't imagine not even knowing the year.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're a physically small person, and you bought the truck because you wanted a truck.
Yeah.
This man has no need to compensate. Even though he is bite-sized. He is great in spirit. But not you, Chris. You're small in both manhood and manhood. Allegedly.
That truck's never seen a speck of mud.
See, this is the problem is, this might be the only way that we can piss him off enough to come on the show.
Everybody keeps saying talk about his truck. I mean,
I'm talking about his truck, all right.
Brother, I have a 1989 F350. I know way too many things about it. I've done work to it myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm officially at a point where I'm in a position where I'm getting work done to it because it's above my pay grade.
Oh yeah.
Such as, getting a new engine and doing a whole turbo swap and making it a 4x. All these fun things. Primarily because I wanted a truck that is going to be durable, last a long time. Mm-hmm. That's why I chose the 89 F350.
You know what? It's like an F350. A man should be durable and last a long time, but I doubt Chris does. I mean, we know he's bold and brash and belongs in the trash.
Yep. You got to give a little context for the bold and brash bit.
For those who are not within 5 years of being the age 27.
No, not even that. That, but also...
Oh, yeah, Chris likes to go on and say he's blunt and he's brash and he's honest, like blah, 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 uses the same terminology over and over again. It means nothing. But bold and brash is a SpongeBob reference. Squidward is an artist and he makes something and he says, I call it bold and brash. And then the art critic's like, bold and brash, more like belongs in the trash. So that's where that one came. That's a deep cut.
People are loving the shade right now. People are losing it, especially probably considering most of the stuff that we've done about this case in the past has been very professional.
Oh yeah, no, I'm done being professional with Chris. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I was surprised he went with the Navy, given his proclivities for women, but that was more a dig at you, Kellen. I'm sorry. That was a dig at our good Navy friend,
our resident Fed, who has given us some wonderful Navy memorabilia.
He really has. Oh boy, yeah, I can't remember what Chris's job was in the Navy right now. I know he was an E6. I think it had something to do with like flight mechanics. He was like a mechanic for aircraft or something.
I'm impressed he got the E6.
Me too. Kind of surprised he could find all the buttons in the plane.
Well, considering what we understand about how he raised Sebastian, he definitely likes pushing buttons.
That's true. Also, I mean, I thought with the Army and the Navy and the military and all that, I think I'd like to see his records, like his disciplinary records. I don't think there will be much on there in the way of, like domestic violence, because he seems very good at hiding that, except when he admits to it on TV and podcasts twice. But I wonder, I wonder how many times he was reprimanded for eating too much and not passing physical exams. Dude is chonky. No, he probably needs the truck because he can't even find it.
Nothing wrong with it being a little plus size, but he's an exception.
Oh yeah, no. He is that's not fat, that's just swelling from all the bullshit.
Yes. He's like the from The Walking Dead, the like bloater zombie.
Yeah, exactly. Should be that for Halloween.
No, Halloween's the one day where he doesn't have to wear a mask. We do have another one from Cameron Pike for $5, which admittedly they say is a little bit of a weird question. But do you have?
Hey, that's we traffic in weird questions.
There you go. No trafficking.
That the right kind of trafficking, the good trafficking.
Do you have a Bible translation for those of us too dumb for KJV? I know it's unrelated, but Weird Bible seems to be in hiatus.
It's not. It's coming back in January. It is January. It's coming back the final Thursday of this month. Weird Bible returns on the final Thursday of this month. In fact, if you want to let me know in the comments, not the chat, the comments, what some good Weird Bible topics would be, please do. Stuff you're interested in. But really, I think the NASB is a solid one. Modern English, literal translation, easy to read. And as far as the modern English translations go, it's very accurate. I will say if you're in for a little bit more of a challenge, you don't want to deal with necessarily all of the early modern English, but you do want a very literal translation. The Lexham English Bible is awesome. It is all online. You can get it for a free app. And it's got a bunch of really great study tools too.
Nice. We have another one that's kind of another case recommendation. It seems like a series of recommendations, actually, from Holding Karens for $5, saying, have either of you heard about Hinterkaifeck, or the two Dutch girls who went missing in Panama, or this man who went missing in a Swiss village?
The two girls who went missing in Panama, I believe I remember from Mr. Ballin episode.
Okay.
The other two, however, no. Unless the Swiss village one, it might be... I know there was a missing 411 about that, where it turned out to not be nearly as weird as it was portrayed to be. Shocker. But Hinterkaifeck, no. Let me look that one up and see if what would that be? How was it spelled?
I'll tell you 1 second. It was Hinterkaifeck.
Hinterkaifeck.
Also,
the Hinterkaifeck murders occurred on the evening of 31st of March 1922, when 6 inhabitants of a small Bavarian homestead located approximately 70 kilometers north of Munich were murdered by an unknown assailant. 6 victims were Andreas Gruber, his wife Godzilla, their widowed daughter Victoria, Victoria's children, and the maid. They were all found struck dead with a mattock, also known as a grub axe. Okay, interesting. The perpetrator or perpetrators lived with the 6 corpses of their victims for 3 days.
what?
Weird.
That's intense.
Yeah. Oh, my nose. What's next?
Patrick McNeely for $5 said, to add some humor, if the Ramseys went to Atlanta, does that mean that the devil went down to Georgia?
That is the title of the very first episode or chapter of the next episode.
Is it really?
Yeah, in the Ramsey case.
That's phenomenal.
Devil went down to Georgia.
I love it. Elena suspects that I believe she said the Randys, but I believe she meant the Ramseys did it. They spent so long dodging the police. Why not just do the interview, even with your lawyers, especially nowadays?
For me, honestly, that's the big one.
Yeah.
That is the big one. Is I get not doing the interviews like without lawyers present. Why not do them with the lawyers present? There's no good reason.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense. Ryan Wickett for 832 saying we're not angry, we're just disappointed, or we just got to move on. Is saying you're not angry, you're disappointed, almost like talking to a child, which is an interesting point to point out.
There's something that also might come up. How the way he talks in the interviews is almost as if he's telling someone it's okay. There's only one person he would tell it's okay to.
Himself?
No, Burke.
That was referring specifically to Chris.
Oh, sorry. I thought that you said Randy. and then Ramsey.
That was the previous super
Oh,
chat.
okay. So I must have just misunderstood.
Yeah, this one.
Sorry,
was
guys. I'm still getting over something.
Yeah, no, you're good.
What was it?
Which interesting though, relevant. I'm curious to see how that pans out. But no, Ryan was specifically saying we're not angry. We just got to move on.
Yeah, no, that's what the Ramsey said.
Oh, I thought that was Chris said. He was like, we just
that
wanna
was
move
Ramsey.
on.
That was John.
Got it.
During
Okay.
his interview, he said, "We're not angry. We just want to move on."
Right.
The person he'd say that to would be Burke.
Somebody had mentioned earlier that Chris also had said that we just want to move on. So that's where I got.
No, I hadn't caught that one.
Yeah, no, that's what mixed me up. J-Mo was asking if we could do a Team Fortress 2 lore vid at some point for the fun of it.
Maybe.
It would definitely be lighter than most of the stuff. Also, thank you for everything else you've sent, but just by the nature of, time and all that stuff, we can't get to it now, but we did read it. We did enjoy it. Thank you. And that goes for everybody that we haven't read aloud yet. It's primarily just we're keeping things as focused as possible. Indy for 199 says, is Susan Bennett still on YouTube? Do you know?
No idea. I haven't looked. To be clear, I do mean the only Susan Bennett to which I refer is Jameson.
Yes. Birch McCallum for Canadian 699 is saying, hey fellas, you always make fun of the RCMP. If you want weird, crazy, and shady, check out the Portapeak shootings in Nova Scotia.
I will happily do that. Portapeak?
Yes. It's an interesting spelling there.
You'll have to put that in.
I shall. Here, let me add that actually.
There's a bunch of recent-ish Canadian cases I want to look at too when I get a chance.
Oh.
One of these days, the RCMP is really going to be mad at me. And on that day, I will celebrate. Ugh.
Yeah, hopefully it's sooner than later. Sunspire Cryptid for, I believe, another Canadian $10 says, the fact that Chris Proudfoot said he had information that would stop people for looking for an actual child speaks more than anything how little he cares about him.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care what he did. We want him home. Yeah, honestly, it doesn't really make sense to me what he might be insinuating there, because there's really, I mean, granted, this is really good credence to him being a horrible stepfather, but like there's nothing that a child really could do that should make any parent say, yeah, we don't want him home in that instance.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe trying to harm your other children.
Chris admitted that there was something that had happened with Sebastian,
Yeah.
which, if I remember correctly, was implied to be I don't know how to phrase this. Implied to be related to what Chris had allowed to happen to Sebastian in California, when a 13-year-old boy did something inappropriate to Sebastian, and charges were not pressed because the boy was under the age of because he was too young to be prosecuted for them. That just wasn't true, by the way. There was no law saying that 13 was too young to prosecute for a sex crime. And in fact, as of 2018, California does prosecute children under the age of 12 for sex crimes. Under the age of 12.
Yep.
Yeah. Can't be prosecuted for anything under the age of 12 except for 5 things. They're all sex crimes. I think Chris just didn't care.
Wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, Chris said to one of the interviewers at one point that there had been an incident with Sebastian and I guess a family member, he wouldn't say who, where some people, like Sebastian just, he tried to kind of he almost made it seem like, this was something he had a feeling might happen if Sebastian was around, when it seems like the issue might have been that Sebastian just didn't realize what is and isn't appropriate. And it sounds like it might have had something to do with his side of the family. So I don't know what that would have been. But the way Chris talks about Sebastian does not appear as a loving stepfather to me. I know what a loving stepfather looks like. Chris is not that.
No, not even close.
If I had gone missing at the age of 15, like legitimately missing, Christian would have turned over every stone. Like,
Oh, I can easily picture that as well.
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been there would have been no question. Like, he would have been out there every day.
Mm-hmm.
Chris didn't lift a finger. You're such a piece of shit, Chris.
Yeah, it's sad.
You go into a very special club with John Ramsey and Roberta Laundrie.
Yep.
The club is the We'll Never See Heaven club.
Next super chat from my wife for $7.99. Yeah, $7.33. Sorry.
Great
Saying,
number.
yeah, it is fun. Saying, remember, Aidens, Freemasons are seen as cultists. If he wants a quick win in the public's opinion, he'll throw that out. Be ready for it.
Oh, yeah. As we all know, what we do in the lodge is sacrifice babies to Moloch. That's definitely what we do, and it's not we argue over what we want to order for dinner and talk about finances.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, these days anyway.
Yeah, it's mostly a charity organization. Once you get a little higher up, people are like, oh, once you get higher up, they reveal the Satanism. And it's like, once you get a little higher up, it's a little bit more esoteric, and it's a bunch of old guys talking about, like, philosophy and religion.
So basically any club ever.
Yeah, I mean, people do this weird thing where, like, the first 3 degrees are from this time period, and then all the stuff they have a problem with is from a lot later. And they're like, well, clearly the stuff that was added later is the real stuff. You know, it's basically fan fiction.
Yeah.
Like, the first 3 or 4 are really the only ones that matter. Like, everything after that is not Freemasonry, it's Freemasons talking. Do I like all of it? No. Do I approve of all of it? No. There's a reason I'm not part of it. But that's kind of like saying, you know, I went to Penn State, therefore I must agree with Sandusky.
Yeah, not a whole lot of logic there.
Like, there's a connection, but the connection is way back here.
Yeah.
Also, if I come to find out that, like, all that weird stuff about Freemasonry is true, and up at the top they're telling you God's name is Jabulon, and you know, you like the Christian God isn't real, and blah 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 blah, I will simply not take part in that, or I will leave. Or more realistically, knowing me, I'll be like, hey guys, see all this explicitly Christian material from the Middle Ages when we were founded?
Remember that oath I had to
Making
take?
that stuff real.
Yeah.
I'm bringing that back.
Remember that oath you made me take when I signed up?
Yeah, like, so, you know, if Freemasonry does turn out to be something hokey up at the top, you'll hear it from me first.
I was going to say, are we going to get a Freemasonry?
No, you would just get me very adamantly saying I'm no longer a Mason.
Part of the oath.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, the thing is, that oath was not me and the other Masons. That was me and God.
Yeah.
So, unlike some people we've talked about tonight, I take my religion seriously.
Hey.
Don't use it as a robe to make myself fit in.
We're coming up on the end here. Kellen, let me know what your hernia situation is in terms of what the surgery is they're going to have for you to repair it. Because I've had one since junior year of college that I haven't done anything with that I really should. And I was just talking about that over the weekend, that I really should kind of get that fixed.
You probably should get the hernia fixed.
When I went to the doctor, they were like, it's small. You don't need any surgery right now. Eventually you will. But no,
I would do it. You have insurance.
Yeah, it was more along the lines of the
Recovery?
methods. Well, no, it was the methods for repairing it were not great at the time. And so both the doctor and my parents were like, wait 10 years and see if it improves.
Weird.
They would go in and put like this mesh in there, and it would kind of, there were people who would have the mesh degrade because it's an upper abdominal one, and it is small because my abdominal muscles have always been pretty weak.
Gotcha.
I actually found out in high school, sorry, minor tangent here, we were doing a bunch of exercises for water polo, and we were in the weight room, and the lifting coach was in there, and I stopped him. I brought him aside. I was like, hey, just wanted to clarify something. Every time we do an ab exercise, I feel it in the top of my legs and not really in my abs. So he had me lay on a bench press bench and do a couple of movements, and he after about 30 seconds, he was like, I genuinely have never seen anything like this before in my life. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And he said, your body has found a way to bypass your abdomen in terms of like stabilization muscles. It's activated, but nowhere near as much as it should be. And I was like, really? What can I do about that? And he's like, I have a doctorate in this. I have no idea. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, a little tidbit of my history there. There's a reason my lower back is always really stiff, and it's because it's overcompensating for the lack of strength in my abdomen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to process everything I just heard.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Kellen, let me know. And then we've got a few other ones. Somebody's asking if we're ever going to get a lizard people conspiracy video.
I don't even know where to start, man. Where do I start with lizard people?
Start at the beginning.
I guess you go back and find the first time people mentioned lizard people.
Somebody's asking, Alyssa Snodgrass is asking us if we've heard of the Alyssa Turney case, similar to the Chris Brownfoot, to the stepfather in that case. Both made the children seem bad, like it's their fault.
Alyssa Turney. Let's see.
And then
2001, Phoenix area. She was 17.
just heads up, Tony Mathias is in the chat saying Seth will come on your show, no questions asked.
Oh, sick. Yeah, Tony, you could reach out to me on Twitter. You can shoot us an email at thelorelodge@gmail.com. Just let us know what the best way to have that conversation is, and we can get it set up. I'll come up with a list of questions.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then lastly, from Yowit for $5, saying, been watching for a while, and I must say I love y'all's content. Also, I had 2 hernias when I was 4 and 6, and I was just talking about it with my wife. Weird. Thank you. And thank you to everybody else.
Hernias are one of like my greatest fears. Like, it's just, I would not like that. Like, it would make me deeply uncomfortable.
It's weird. When I'm thinner, you can see it.
No, don't tell me that, because I'll be looking for it over the summer. I don't want to see your intestines or whatever.
It's fine. It's
Keep
not
those inside.
They're inside, technically. They're just outside the inside outside.
Oh, God. I am too sick for this conversation.
I know. But yeah, thank you for everybody who has sent stuff in tonight. We're sorry that we were unable to get to all of them, but we are trying to focus on keeping these generally under 2 hours if we can moving forward. That is the main reason for the prioritization of things being relevant. But nonetheless, thank you to everybody who sent things otherwise. It is greatly appreciated, especially Gomb and JMO sending.
You guys send a lot of stuff, and we appreciate all of it.
Trust me, we read them and we enjoy them.
Some of them we just can't read.
Yes, yeah, not allowed on this show. Not at this stage. It's about 2 years ago.
Too serious.
Yeah, we've gotten too serious with things. But
I will say, everybody who's part of the Sebastian Rogers community there, who's in the chat, let Chris know. Let Chris know Seth is volunteered to come on.
Yeah. No, I think it'd be great. I mean,
yeah, I part of the reason that I can't let him know myself is that anytime I go in to like comment on one of these streams and be like, hey, why don't you come talk to us? All of them are in subscribers only mode. That's just crazy, right? It's almost like you're trying to keep dissent and conversation at a minimum.
Yeah.
But hey, he's blunt and he's brash.
We know where he belongs.
All right. What is that one from? Is that Gom?
Gom is saying, miss the goofy. Bring it back,
I
please.
know. We'll try and have maybe one goofy stream a month. Also, that's what Liquored Lore is. So
Yeah.
if you go on Patreon, you'll see a great episode of Liquored Lore.
Maybe we'll start doing a Liquored Lore segment where we go through all of the heinous super chats from the previous month.
That's just a segment on Liquored Lore or live that we do live?
No, segment.
Okay, yeah.
Segment, yeah.
Oh boy.
Could be fun.
That could be horrible.
So,
All right.
gives you reason for them to still occur.
Well,
but nonetheless,
Thank you, all of you, so much for being here.
yeah, seriously.
It means a lot. We're so glad that we get to do this as a career, and that every once in a while we get to make an impact.
Yeah.
And actually do some good for the world.
That's all we can ever hope doing this show. I mean, it's shocking that we've gotten this far, just considering how it started and the fact that most of our life outside of this hasn't really changed.
Yeah, that's in the weird part.
Yeah. So
The really weird part.
we appreciate it.
Nobody in town cares that we're mildly famous, and I honestly love it.
Yeah, it's kind of great.
Did I tell you I did a couple of songs with my old band at Molly's a couple weekends ago?
You mentioned it a little bit.
Yeah, and I got off the stage, and I was actually wearing this exact shirt, which you can get from Bunker Branding. Bunkerbranding.com. Go to the Lore Lodge segment. But I hop off the stage, and she just holds up her phone to me with our YouTube page pulled up, just kind of looking inquisitively. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's me." her friends were like, "Oh my god, you should ask for a picture." And she was like, "No, I don't want to." I was like, "If you want a picture, you can. I will pose with you for a picture." Like,
Yeah.
I'm just a dude.
He's just a guy.
Literally, I was like, "I'm just a guy."
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, but all right. Thank you everybody for being here. This upcoming Friday is a video about Missing 411. It is the beginning of the Pennsylvania cluster. I get a little sassy.
I'm excited to get back into 411.
Yeah.
I was surprised that I missed it as much as I did.
Yeah. And then we'll be back with JonBenet Part 4 the week following that. And haven't totally decided what I'm going to do after that, but it'll be probably a conspiracy theory or a cult or something like that.
I know
Maybe
what
you'll
I'm
finally
pushing
get the
for.
Seekers. I have to read a whole book for that.
Yeah, but you do that so frequently, it should be quick.
I mean, I guess I don't actually have to learn anything. I just have to synthesize and report.
Yeah.
That'll be easier. That's nice. Okay. Let's do that.
Yep.
All right. So you'll get a cult in 3 weeks.
There we go.
Huzzah.
And not just a cult, but the reason that confirmation bias and
cognitive dissonance.
and cognitive dissonance both. My pinky.
He hit the wrong button.
It's just my pinky grazed the touchpad. So
Well, I mean, every time we touch.
I get this feeling.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for being here. We will see you on the next one. Have a great rest of your night.